Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Natalie Menten, one of Colorado's Liberty leaders. Well, Natalie, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, Natalie, you've been a leading voice for taxpayers and an opponent of excessive government spending for years. So I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about the upcoming 2025 special session. So, Natalie, take it away. What do people need to know?
All right, so August 21st, starting 10 a.m., the governor has called a special session. It's not so special anymore if you do it every year. It is expected to last several days. And this is largely in part because of budget and the federal action called the, HR 1, House Resolution 1, nicknamed the Big Beautiful Bill. The governor has called for a special session to address, one, the reductions from the federal funding and how the state will react to that, also directing a statewide hiring freeze. Is blaming, of course, the Democrats are using this platform to blame Trump and Boebert and all these other people for catering just billionaires, but at the end of the day, it's an income tax reduction, and that is a good thing. It's a good thing for all of us. So what we've got here is this Executive Order 2025-009, issued August 6th. As I say, special session is going to start on the 21st, next week. They're blaming Donald Trump in this message here for $1.2 billion deficit in the current fiscal year. Again, that's less income tax paid into the system by state income taxes, and $700 million in the following 2 years, each of those 2 years. We're going to see here in the governor's executive order that he's also blaming the Republicans' actions for no longer having a surplus under the Taxpayer's Bill of Rights. And that's been a big talking point. And I'll show a little bit later how much people are laughing at it, this accusation about that. Again, reminder, we're paying less taxes in. When you pay less taxes in, it's pretty obvious you have less TABOR refunds. The whole goal is pay less in from the get-go. Just like you do with your paycheck. You try to gauge what is going to get you to a zero at the end of the year. You don't want to give the government money to be hanging on to it for a year. So actual truth is, I'm jumping this for one slide, the Democrats have raided our TABOR refunds. And they think everybody's forgotten. And I'm sure actually most people weren't even aware in the first part. But House Bill 24-1311, which took effect in 2024 for that tax year, continues on. What it does is raise TABOR refunds, giving that money instead to people who may or may not have paid into the system. The truth of the matter is they had originally estimated this at $750 million. It's actually come in. The diversion from TABOR now has jumped to $832.6 million for just 1 year. So it was more in the very first half year, more in the second year. That's where TABOR refunds have largely gone. If there's blame, it's that. The designated special session subjects, jumping into that real quick. The main topic is going to be spending reduction, and we'll see how much of that pie is that, and use of state fiscal reserves. That looks pretty likely, which I'm just going to point out is interesting. We actually have pretty decent reserves right now, so they could draw down. But this does not make sense to me because I swear to God, the Democrats have said for years, TABOR doesn't let you save. TABOR doesn't let government save. So it is fascinating, I think, that we have reserves when TABOR doesn't even supposedly let us do that. So anyway, that'll be one thing. But then they're going to be looking to increase revenue. So I talked about two things were, one, spending reduction, like the state hiring freeze, use of some savings account money. But then there is going to be money shifting schemes, and scheme is a very legitimate word to use in this case, where they will be basically taking away credits or considerations for certain industries, specifically. Businesses, of course, always a bad guy, right? I mean, they're always a great guy. They never actually help the economy. Yeah, right. Anyway, that was sarcasm there if anybody now picked that up. Um, so changes to the insurance premium tax credits. This is an example. If insurance company, as part of its home workforce within the state, they get certain considerations. So they may be changing, the government may be changing the hurdles, um, the criteria for those different things. A big thing, this is one thing I think most of regular people should be concerned about, is an income tax change. This is a very big one, and we're going to have a couple slides real quick describing this. Colorado is one of a handful of states thereabout that actually mimics the guidelines on federal tax laws. If we did not, you would be having a federal income tax form, and then you would have a separate income tax form for Colorado. And instead of just writing in from whatever it was online, whatever it is, 2635, whatever on the IRS form, you'd have to be calculating pretty much from scratch. So that would be a big change. Average taxpayers would feel the impact of this. The person who does their normal, 1040, 104. So we need to be very wary of this. One bill that is coming from both directions is changes to the sales tax vendor fees. Vendor fees are, you collect sales tax for the government, and then that could be different levels. So you could have more than one sales tax return. Very likely you would have more than one sales tax return. Usually there's a small percentage that is covering your handling and taking care of this calculation and all the different things. They would be talking about eliminating that. There is a counter bill that we'll talk about also that, anyway, I'm getting in the weeds on there. I'm just supposed to be staying on the subject. So sorry about that. I got off track. So changes to sales tax vendor fees. Here's a big part of this. Moving on, what healthcare is going to do, because a part of also the federal changes is saying we are no longer going to fund some of these sources who are taking money for what we believe to be not the way the U.S. taxpayers' money should be spent. That's basically the summary of it. And what we're talking about is documented or undocumented people largely, and also a work requirement. So that can be kind of bundled into changes to funding for those who are taking public services and more accountability, transparency. Of course, the government is fighting against, some governments fighting against this, saying, oh my God, it's horrible that we'd actually have to have more verifications. And this work program, oh my God, that's going to cost us so much money. We'll go into that in a minute. Then, because of changes to health credit, insurance credits, there's going to be topics about that. Amending the ballot issues that we have talked about a little bit in the past between you and me, Brandon, on the show. This has to do with the free school lunch. And basically, those who earn a certain amount of income, above a certain amount of income, are no longer getting deductions, the same amount. So part of the money that they would have kept in their pocket instead of going to the government then goes to the school lunch program. It has overspent itself. And then with the combined reduction in the federal funding, they need to revise those ballot issues. Then a big one that's very interesting, actually, artificial intelligence. And that's, I'll leave it at that for a moment. So in big picture, we've got buckets here. So there's the revenue and spending adjustments. Then there's artificial intelligence. And then there's the health insurance, which has some overlap with the backfill for the whole documented, whether, they should continue to get funding without, abiding by immigration laws. So those are the session buckets. Now, oops, jumped ahead. Let me jump real quick just to the income tax discussion, give a little background to people understand. Again, we conform with what the feds are doing. They call that rolling conformity. And shorthand for that is IRC. And it's common among states. And I'm going to go to a map here that really the whole point of what, and I put in a link here at the bottom. I would say for somebody who wants the in-depth discussion of the state's assessment of how the federal bill, the big, beautiful bill, HR 1, will have impact in Colorado. This link here at the bottom is a detailed report. It's actually fairly interesting. But jumping back to income tax, I want to point out, so a lot of these changes, again, are going to be talking about businesses what businesses can write off, can they carry forward a net operating loss, um, uh, certain credits, those type of things make the difference. So it all comes down to the income tax. Colorado has a very fair income tax system. Some people don't like it. They think those who make more should be paying far more percentage wise. I disagree personally. That's penalizing production, and that's not how we want to see the United States go. So when we look at corporate income taxes, just really briefly on this color chart here, those that are brown have zero corporate income tax. So you can see we have states, two of them nearly touching our border, one certainly touching our border, and others nearby. So that's Washington, Nevada, Wyoming, South Dakota, Texas, and Ohio. Colorado has a 4.25% income tax applied to corporations. Now, if we look, I don't know if I'm, there we go, individual income tax, same thing. Don't think we're like, some people think we may be paying too low, but just a good reminder that for individual income tax, there's even more states that are at a zero. So now we got Washington, Nevada, Wyoming, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Ohio, New Hampshire, Florida. And so, it kind of clicks when I've heard about people moving out of Colorado and the places that they are going to move to. I'm going to say that the states I've heard more frequently, some of those are on this list with zero income tax. So maybe there is, a factor there that draws people to lower tax states like Colorado, where we have our Taxpayers' Bill of Rights protecting us from being gouged more than now. So just jumping back to, I won't go into, all of these 100 million here, this fiscal forts, the shortfalls. At the end of the day, the government has increased the amount of those people getting benefits. And by increasing these things, using the COVID money, which there have been many, many, there's been sufficient amount of articles written about this, just in Colorado, but I'm sure across the United States, the gorging, that's the word I'm looking for, not gouging, gorging on the federal dollars and building programs, hiring more employees and building up. And then when the money goes away, they go, wow, 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 wow. Well, it was a bad deal. And I'm going to say that the Republicans also, when COVID started, were not innocent in what occurred. So what does really bother me, though, is the criticism of the work program. This mimics, in a way, you and I have done a show, and I know we're going way over here on my time personally, but meaning what my goal was to do. But we have a senior property tax work-off program, which basically comes down to volunteering. It's not mandatory. It's just something where you go and give your time. In exchange, you would reduce your property taxes. We haven't seen that boom across Colorado, but jurisdictions use it. And same way, if the government is saying we're going to come up with a revenue shortfall, well, they always say our number one spending outlay out is people. Well, now you've got all these people who need to work, volunteer, whatever. So honestly, I meant to do this, but didn't. So I'm doing it now. Is that we should make sure during the special session that if there is any question about what that volunteer term is for those who are getting the subsidies, that serving a government in a position to be able to cover some of these shortfalls. The government's also been complaining about we can't get enough people. Well, if you have more retirees, that's again wealth, wisdom, experience, life experience that could be used. So this criticism of the work program, I think, does have this part of this discussion in our state, the special session we're going to have. So that's why I included this slide. And the Democrats, I captured this slide just because it was interesting, because it was both two big radio hosts, Mandy Connell and Ross Kaminsky. So I thought it was a good slide to kind of capture both where the Colorado Dems are saying the Congress, the reason we have this problem is because of these tax loopholes. And we got a woman here who's very well-known daytime drive radio show. I generally don't curse here. And then she twice inserts curse words into this post, like, are you like kidding me? Twice. And Ross Kaminsky, who I've been on his show, and I think he takes a very he looks into what he is covering, and I appreciate that very much. And what he states to the chair of the Dem Party is, um, no, we're not supposed to talk about facts, but this is one of the most ridiculous lies I've seen from the Colorado Dems. So they've created this problem. Now they want to blame everything on Tabor and Republicans, and no, it's just it's spending. It's a spending problem. So back to the Tabor refund impact. Yeah, Tabor refunds go down. That's because we're paying less income taxes in. This is a good thing. And that's ideally how it works. You don't want the government hanging on to your money for a year and then playing shenanigans, as we've seen in some elections. And as a reminder, Ref C. So Ref C, that we're not going to go into detail, but I just confirmed numbers recently with a state economist. And Ref C, passed by the voters in 2005, changed the definition of where we would start to get a Tabor refund and where we wouldn't. Change that threshold. The government's kept $37.2 billion that we would have otherwise gotten refunded. 30 over that's since 2005 when Ref C went through. In contrast, as a reminder, Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, since it was passed, we have gotten 13 billion. So 13 billion versus 37 billion. The government has already kept 3 times what, and it should have been in our pockets. And then again, House Bill 241311, which is a big thievery thing. I mean, if they want, okay, I'm not going to go into that. Stop. All right, next slide. All right. So we're going now to the actual meat. This is going longer than I want, but maybe you can clip stuff where I'm going off ranting. So we're going to go into this authorized pre-release. So here's the big gist of this. With all of these financial issues they're talking about, we're going to have a special session starting next Thursday, 10 a.m. We don't know all the bills that will be introduced. What we get right now is a page on the website, and it's authorized by sponsor for pre-release. So this means the people who are willing to stand up and put their bill out there to let the public inspect it, look at it, maybe be a stakeholder. Wouldn't that be something else? I mean, if we did a Cora on, let's say, I don't know, McCluskey, or whoever you want to pick, and said, I want your emails talking about the bills you're thinking, they would deny you likely. Okay, I'd be willing to bet. I'm not a gambler. They would block you from getting those emails saying it's work product. So here we have them reaching out to stakeholders like lobbyists, but you and I don't get to be part of that conversation until Thursday when they introduce the bill. You got it. I mean, do you have comments?
I think that's one of the key points with the special session this year and in previous years is that this policy, this legislation is crafted behind closed doors where the public is left out of the picture, like you said, Natalie. I mean, they're working with lobbyists, they're working with other people in the state government to come up with ways to generate more revenue, take more money from the private sector, from the actual economy that keeps people employed here in Colorado, and to figure out ways to sneak around Tabor, of course. So it's just shameful how so many of these Democrats in the legislature, frankly, talk about democracy, talk about a representative government, but the reality is all this stuff is crafted behind closed doors. It's preordained. They come out all of a sudden when the special session starts, and it's already planned out what they're going to do, and the public is the last one to know. It's absolutely shameful.
Yeah, very frustrating, and it'll be a big game of hurry up and wait when you get down at the Capitol. I don't know when I'm going down. I'm certainly going down. I don't know how much it depends. This is likely several days. So if we look at the bills here real quick, we've got Weinberg. I'm not going to read the numbers and everything. I'm just going to give the subject and Weinberg Artificial Intelligence Systems. My read on it, basically postponing the date when those in the AI field are going to have to kind of guarantee there's consumer protections. There's a lot of risk gamble. It could really stall technology in some sense with those who are sue happy or legit things even. There's a lot. AI's wonderful. AI's scary. It goes both ways. Anyway, leave it at that. We got the next bill. That's Richardson and Baisley. to Republicans, limit subsidies, health insurance, affordability, enterprise. Basically, that's saying you won't get the subsidies unless you are a documented citizen. We got Pelton R and Sukla, health insurance, affordability, and it's board appointments. It's just modifying that board and adding, I believe, a little more representation for rural entities. Next bill, RICS, health providers practice scope preventative care. That's adding some types of medical personnel being able to administer more medical assistance than they can currently. We've got then R. Pelton, and that's Rod Pelton, and Ty Winter, and I'm going backwards, I should say the other name, but prohibit certain cash fund use against federal action. I hope I've got this one right. And basically it's saying, okay, Colorado Dems, because that's who it is. Colorado Dems, the feds are cutting off this money. You are not allowed to go raid the cash funds to then backfill that money that's been cut off from the feds. In a way, it's kind of like the Baisley-Richardson bill that you can't go and take it from the general citizens, the general fund pocketbook. Anyway, all right, keep going on here. Then we've got Barron and Bright. I'm going to say I've not read that one yet. So people know where to go to read this stuff. They can see it here. Taggart, Kirkmeyer, they're doing a spending reduction procedures. That really is just telling the governor, basically he has to be more transparent and communicative when these are spending reductions and have a game plan versus like willy-nilly and leaving the JBC out of it. The JBC is a little bit irked right now. We're going to see that in a couple of these bills because here was this planning session for cuts and procedure, and they hadn't met with the JBC, and JBC was bringing up meeting after meeting. Why wasn't JBC part of this discussion? Why you just jump to special session? I won't go into that, but that's why you're going to see a couple bills on telling Polis what he has to do, basically. So let's see. Where are we at? We've got the Woog, Hartsook, Kirkmeyer. Again, retention of vendors' fees for collecting sales tax. This one actually is pro-business. So it is a counter to a bill that you'll see in a moment. Then we've got English, Joseph Exum. That's a healthcare bill. I have not read that in great detail, but I suspect that it is also a counter, or look at the reverse if you would like, that communities who will no longer get Fed funding because they do not have proof of documented, people are getting the care. The Graffs bill is a prescription drug benefit information transparency. I read that one, and frankly, I'm interested to hear him speak about that, considering the special session and how this will have fiscal impact. I suspect it does, and I'm interested to hear from. We've got Lindstedt, Carter, Prezell, consumer protections again for AI interactions. We've got Woodrow, McCormick, Kip, Face Winter. Not surprised at all. Businesses are bad. You shouldn't be keeping any of that money. You got to let the state have all of its sales tax. So that's a counter to the Kirkmeyer other bill. Gonzalez, Ryan, Brooks, Liston, and Rod Pelton again. And they're saying in this one, if you're going to change the state vendor fee, again, the sales tax collection thing, you got to go to voters. Then we got Puglisi, Caldwell, Pelton, B, Kirkmeyer, additions to definition federal taxable income. That is changing, if I recall correctly, changing state statute and basically adding on, without having to go to voters, that if there are any changes, they have to go to the voters. So basically, they're trying to beef up, play defense, play offense to these changes they're proposing. They're going to try to say, if we change the income tax laws, we don't have to go to the voters. It's a tax policy, and then they'll say it's de minimis. De minimis means small. They use this in the RTD case, which I was intimately involved with. So we're going to see a game of what is a TABOR violation and what is not. they're going to push the limits. Carson's bill is more not controversial, so I'm not going to go into detail, but it's more tax credit for that health savings account. There's a big increase coming because of some changes, and state-only funding for certain entities. That is a shift where I believe if the feds cut the funding off, they are saying they can still use the state funding to backfill. Now, this one, we've got voter approval additions to federal taxable income. That's a reverse of the House bill. Sometimes they'll run one through the House and one through the Senate. So to me, it looks like that is two. There'll probably be a lot of overlap on those two bills. Basically saying if you're going to make changes to the federal taxable income for Colorado's Form 104, you've got to go to the voters. And it's good because even if they're outnumbered, they're making it a bill that's going to be up for discussion. The next bill is processed to reduce spending during shortfall. They're really concentrating, again, Polis saying what he's going to do specifically is my gist of it. The next bill is the change in the ballot issues because they've got to adjust the fiscal notes. Then the last bill on this, increased transparency for algorithmic systems. That is, can your job be harmed by a negative AI report on you? So it's going to be very interesting hearing some of these discussions. So that is basically the rundown right now of these bills. So here's the takeaway of this. We heard revenue, AI, health. We don't have any fiscal notes on these. So we won't until they're introduced. This is all we get right now until Thursday when they're introduced. And we can see here, if you look at the LLS number, which these are a temporary number, so it won't be the same when it goes to be heard in committee. If you look here, about the highest number we've got a 43. I think that's the highest one down here. That tells me that because that 43 was present fairly early, that we've got at least 50 bills submitted. At least 50. Now, submitted doesn't necessarily mean it goes to an end hearing because maybe they'll decide to shift, focus on one or another. And there may be some consolidation, but it's going to be so scattered all over the place. I mean, we're talking about 3 hefty issues, frankly. We're not talking about, small, and we're talking health insurance, AI, and penalties for harm to somebody, and then big budget and spending changes. So again, several days. I don't see how they finish this in 3 days. 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know what the longest special session is in Colorado. I mean, it's pretty rare that we've had now, we'll be going on 3 in 3 years. But a couple more notes. Anybody get to this and keep checking it? There could be more added. Legislative staff, I'm sure, is working through the weekend, and they've been really helpful. I reached out to them on Friday, and 2 of them were very responsive, calling me back within a short amount of time, gave me as much info as they could. And when I say that, it's because there was a certain agreement drafted for how this is all going to proceed and the different processes. And the link to get to this document is here at the bottom of this page. So it's basically the executive committee's meeting that they had on August, well, it was at the beginning of August. I don't remember the date break. It was a couple of weeks ago. So we had the deadline was today at noon. That means all the bills got submitted. But again, only a certain amount will be shown on that website because some of these sponsors don't want to release yet. They're going to wait till introduction. But they are laying out the rules here. And I think what is very important to note is that in the agreement, it said 1 bill per each member. So that meant we were looking at possibly 100 bills. So when I say 50, that sounds horrible, but it could be 100. No, actually, let's go to what the memo really says. The memo says the Committee on Delayed Bills of the respective houses may waive the deadlines first, but may approve additional bill requests for a member. So if you're really, really special, you get extra special session bills. So I don't know how many we end up with, but it's going to be a very hard thing to keep up with. And the shift, I mean, when you go down there, what to expect is basically, well, before we go into that discussion, let me just say, without having to go down there, you could be like Joe here. Joe works at a auto body shop, and he wants to testify on how raising insurance premiums or doing something or raising taxes means he gets home even later to see his kid and help her with her English test for the next day. So he's mad because he's going to have to testify probably, but the good news is he can do it remotely. So there, I'm sorry, that was a little silly thing, but I was just explaining why Joe does not look very happy with his air mask nearby and going to have to fight for keeping more money in his pocket because at the end of the day, the special session's number one goal is to increase the revenue to the state of Colorado and maybe reduce some spending.
Wow. Well, awesome, Natalie. I really appreciate you taking the time to put this all together and to do the digging into the bills that have been introduced so far. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on everything happening with the special session and really digging into it going forward. So this is a great start, great primer for people so that they can understand what we're facing here in Colorado. But I think you hit the nail on the head there with that closing statement here that, it's of nearly $1 billion deficit for our state government. And I would say that's a good start because that's $1 billion more that the people of Colorado have in their wallets and businesses have to spend on building their businesses and hiring people, which is important, more important than what the state government's doing, that's for sure. But ultimately, it is the goal of the state government, these greedy state legislators, greedy politicians who want to steal more of our money and do everything possible to recoup that lost revenue. So very unfortunate, but people got to be vigilant, pay attention, show up for remote testimony or in person if you can. I'm going to do my best to be down there as much as possible. But yeah, this is a big fight for people. And what else? What else, Natalie? What are your final thoughts here?
Oh, those little things, just think about folks. I mean, when we have the fiscal notes, hopefully, each fiscal note is going to adequately reflect that one, you're paying less in income tax, and that's the reason for it. Two, more money in your pocket because you paid less income tax means you're paying more in sales tax. Near roughly half of Colorado's revenue is sales tax. So keeping more money is good in our pockets. It means less subsidies. It means less need for handouts. So that's it. We're going to stay optimistic and probably have to do an update because I'm sure there's some, I would guess there's some B-O-M-B bills that are going to come out on the floor about 11 a.m. on Thursday. And if they're bad enough, we may have a rally on the east side of the Capitol that afternoon.
Real.
Um,
There we go.
something along the line of keep your hands off our wallets. Somebody may have reserved the East Lawn. I don't know. So we'll see. If there's some bad bills again Thursday, who knows?
Yeah, and most importantly, people, your voice matters. Use your voice, speak out, pay attention. These legislators are hoping to get their agenda passed with very little public input, with very little public outcry. Big election year coming up next year. So now's the time to be paying attention, to be standing up, speaking out, and being vigilant. So really appreciate Natalie. Looking forward to talking to you more. Encourage people to follow you on X with Colorado Engaged. And of course, Free State Colorado on my channel there. I'll be posting a lot about this. For up to date the things, follow us on X. So appreciate you, Natalie. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this today.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll see you at the Capitol.
Sounds good. We'll see you there.